Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, I will be doing a review of the HBO series, The Leftovers, which I just recently watched for the first time, and I really adored the series. Now, I wanted to make this video, but I didn't really feel like I had a reason to make it, until I kind of realized that we're actually right at the 2-year anniversary of the airing of the finale, so I kind of decided, why not? Let's do it anyway. So yeah, let's talk about The Leftovers. Warning here, I will be spoiling the entire show. So yeah, watch the show before you watch the video. So yeah, Lost is one of my favorite shows of all time, and I knew Damon Lindelof was the showrunner of the show as well, which is what made me initially want to watch this. And it was very different from what I was initially expecting. I expected it to be a sci-fi show about how these people are going to get back, the people who left during the departure. Kind of similar to how Avengers Endgame played out. But instead, what it was essentially the 5-year period in between Infinity War and Endgame, where it's pretty much like the Avengers grieving. And I feel like the show really works, and a lot of that is due to its characters. But let's get started by talking about Season 1, which I know is looked at as the worst of the 3 seasons, and I probably do agree with that. But I still really enjoyed the season as a whole. I do think the first couple episodes start off pretty slow. I mean, you do have the mystery of the departure going on, and that's how the show starts off. But that's kind of something the show disregards, as I said, I mean, they never really focus on that element of the story. Instead, they focus on the characters and how they were affected by the departure, which I thought was an interesting take on this story narrative. And yeah, it was the characters that really kept me with the show during this first season. I really liked the characters of Kevin and Nora. A lot of the supporting cast was pretty strong. The villains of the season, especially Patty, was just such a great character throughout the show. I mean, she was in season 2 as well, as a hallucination or whatever. And I just thought she was probably one of my favorite characters on the show from an entertainment standpoint. Now, I know one of the biggest complaints with this season is the fact that it has such a depressing tone, and it does. And I feel like it's really apt for this season, especially because it has such a focus on the direct ramifications of the departure. Obviously, seasons 2 and 3, that takes a bit of a change, but I do feel like for season 1, that it had to be in this sort of tone. And something else I do like about this show is how the narrative is structured. It's kind of similar to how Lost worked, where most episodes will have their own specific focus, whether on a character or a certain event. And obviously this happens throughout all 3 seasons, and they do it more actually in the later seasons. But I did like how they did like episode 9, where it was entirely a flashback episode. Episode 3 was entirely revolved around Matt's character. I believe there was also an episode entirely revolved around Nora's story as well. Then we move on to season 2, where the show takes a pretty radical change, moving locations, splitting up the cast, having a lot more character-focused episodes, which again, the characters are the highlight of the show. And this season does have new additions to the main cast in the Murphy family, who I didn't like as much as the original cast, but they were fine. I mean, John is probably the one that gets the most screen time throughout the show. But I didn't find him particularly likable in season 2. I think in season 3 he does get better, though. Michael is kind of just there. Erica, never really the main focus of the show, but she does have some stuff here in season 2, and then disappears in season 3. During the season, though, I do feel like Jill was severely underutilized here. She was a pretty big part of season 1, but in season 2, she's just kind of there. She does have Michael as a romantic interest during the season, but that really leads to nowhere. And then she just disappears in season 3, so it's like, I just don't understand what they were doing with her character here. It kind of just felt like she was there just because she kind of had to be. Something else I noticed while watching season 2 is that I do feel like season 2 and 3, to be honest, are less eventful than season 1. And again, while I do like these seasons more than season 1, I do feel like season 1 had more plot going on. And I think a lot of that comes from this season doing a lot of weird things. I mean, there's a lot of retelling of the same scene, but from different characters' perspectives. Then you have the episode where Kevin's dead, trying to get rid of Patty, and that really progresses the plot so minimally. Then you have, 2 episodes focused on the Lori and Tom side of the story. And I feel like that just makes the season as a whole feel shorter than season 1, despite being the same amount of episodes. But with that said, I did enjoy the base narrative of this season much more than season 1. Even though I do feel like it was told in a less direct way. And because of that, I don't feel like most of this season was actually important to the overall narrative of the show that does wrap up in season 3. But now for season 3, which I think was fantastic. I mean, it was weird, both in the way that the story was told, but also certain decisions that were made with the show's narrative. Obviously, the season was made with the intention of being the final season, and I think they did a really good job of wrapping up the stories of Kevin and Nora, which at the end of the day is the heart and soul of the show. But I wasn't fully satisfied with how they handled the other characters. I think some of them, like Jill and Tom, they kind of just left the show unceremoniously early on, while some others had a similar fate later on in the season. And yeah, we got updates on those characters from Kevin in the series finale, and I do like where all those characters ended up, but the final on-screen appearances for a lot of these characters just seemed strange and uneventful. I also found it strange how they split up the cast here. Obviously, this was supposed to be 3 years later, which was a pretty big time jump, and things had to be different from what they were in season 2. But for Jill and Erica just to have left town and make a single cameo in the entire season was just such a weird way to say goodbye to those characters. I mean, Meg was killed off like pretty instantly. Tom just stays behind in Texas and is never shown again after the show moves to Australia. Then once we get to Australia, there's a lot of just individualized episodes. Kevin and Nora have an episode. Matt, Lori, John, and Michael, who joined them later, also get their own episode, followed by another Lori-focused episode. Episode 3 is focused on Kevin Sr., and I found that episode to be pretty boring in my opinion. I just found this entire storyline to be really strange. I like him as a character, but Kevin Sr.'s storyline there where he's just like wandering around Australia trying to get these chants and stuff, it just seemed so weird. Especially because the storyline leads to nothing. Like, I found the entire flood storyline just to be so pointless at the end of the day. Obviously, it was meant to move along the plot because they needed it for other things, but the actual flood storyline itself literally leads to nothing. And speaking of amounting to nothing, we also have that weird Lori scene at the end of episode 6, where that entire episode was setting up for her to commit suicide, but then an episode ends ambiguously where you don't know if she committed suicide or not, which I thought was a pretty cool ending. But then she shows up in the finale, alive, for some reason. Now, first off, I don't even understand why she was committing suicide to begin with. Like, I don't get why that was really even a thing. But then to have her show up in the finale just undoing that is just really dumb. That being said, I really like Lori's character. I mean, I didn't in the first season. The first season, I was just like, whatever. But it's like, by season 3, I actually really liked her character, and she's probably one of my favorite characters outside of Kevin and Nora. Then we get to the finale, which I really love this finale. Again, I do wish we got proper goodbyes to a lot of the other characters, but I love that this episode focused on the relationship between Nora and Kevin, especially because after episode 4, we never really see them together again. And this finale was just done so well for it to take place sometime in the future and have this long-lost love dynamic happening. I thought it really added a bittersweet element to the episode. And I really loved what they did with Nora's story, where they leave it up to interpretation on whether or not she is telling the truth. Which, I mean, from my interpretation, I don't think it happened. I do think she's either lying, but then again, I don't know why she would lie. I think it's probably more of a coping mechanism for her, and I think she truly believes it, but I don't think it actually happened. But what I feel makes the ending even better is where Kevin tells her that he believes her. I thought this was such a masterful way to end off the entire show. That really reminded me of the ending of, like, The Last of Us. At least the way I interpret it, Kevin knows that she's lying, or at least isn't saying the truth, but decides to go along with it anyway to maintain their relationship. And yeah, I mean, I really loved everything they did with this finale. I mean, outside of probably the Lori thing, but whatever. But yeah, it was a great finale and certainly better than a certain other HBO finale I just watched recently. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Leftovers, which I just really love this show and I wanted to talk about it. And while I haven't really thought about where this show ranks for me in the grand scheme of television, it's pretty high up there. I mean, Breaking Bad's still my number 1, but I can definitely see this show placing in my top 5. So yeah, that's my review of The Leftovers. Thank you for watching.